Good day, everybody. How's it going out there this week? Well, this week, unfortunately, there was a tragic incident that happened about a week ago at this point in the city of Las Vegas. So this week, I thought I would talk about these kind of things. And hold on a second. Hold on. Yeah. Hello. Oh, so YouTube is demonetizing videos that talk about tragedies. Oh, well. That's too bad. I really had some inventive solutions about things and stuff like that, and I really wanted to talk about that this week, and so it's a no-go then? Well, I guess YouTube has decided that you will demonetize videos of slacker individuals who are not Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert talking about tragic events, because only the mainstream news media can get to do that. So, I guess that does it for this episode. I'm going to get the hop out of here. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. No. Hold on a second. There's got to be a way to round this, right? There's got to be something I can do. Because I had a whole thing planned today about this and wanted to talk about this particular thing. So, what would Jim Sterling do? He'd come up with some convoluted solution and use some sort of weird trickery in order to discuss the thing he wanted to talk about anyway. So let me do that. All right, let's talk about sunrises. We're going to talk about sunrises today. Sunrises are very beautiful. They're not very beautiful, I guess. They're very nasty things, and they're things that we don't want to deal with. So I guess using that as a metaphor is kind of ironic in that way. But let's use the metaphor of sunrises. And I guess I can't really talk about sunrises either, because sunrises just happened a few hours ago, and I can't talk about sunrises within a few instances of themselves. So I guess we'll talk about sunrises tomorrow. I'm going to get the hop out of here. Thank you very much for watching. Oh, hold on a second. I can't talk about sunrises tomorrow. I can't talk about sunrises tomorrow because the sun's going to rise tomorrow. What do I do? Oh, okay. So I can't talk about sunrises on the day within the time span of it happening, and I can't talk about sunrises occurring in the future, because obviously it could happen in the future, and then I can't talk about sunrises until further on down the line. So how do I fix this problem? Well, I guess we could talk about a sunrise that occurred a while ago, right? I mean, I guess that's a solution. Let's talk about a sunrise that occurred 10 years ago. That should be enough to get past the whole statute of limitations for censorship and talking about things politically, right? I guess that falls outside the scope, correct? So let's talk about a sunrise that occurred over 10 years ago. Let's talk about the sunrise of April 16th, 2007. This particular sunrise occurred in the College of Virginia Tech. So for those of you, and for me, I was coming out of college at that point. It was like literally my last semester of college, because I had to take an extra semester in that thing. So literally, I had just gotten out of college. It was literally just I was in my senior sort of year to get my bachelor's, and this particular sunrise occurred in Virginia Tech. And before the one that occurred just recently, it was the worst mass sunrise in U.S. history up until just a few days ago, where this one eclipsed it, let's say. So now let's just focus on that one from 10 years ago, since apparently you can't talk about the ones that happened recently, so let's talk about the ones that happened in the past. So, and basically, the reason I want to talk about this one is it's how I came up with the solution I'm about to present to you today. So let's go back and think about 2007. Furries in the media were very shunned upon in the early 2000s. It was a bad time for the media in general. And it literally, the media's behavior in the 2000s literally led us to our sort of criticism and sort of distrust in mainstream news media that we find ingrained in our society today. Because back then, they were really getting used to the 24-hour news cycle thing, And they didn't really do much due diligence, and they still sort of don't in many ways, but it was really bad back then. And we're going to go over a key figure in this sort of thing. And when we think about politicizing the sunrise, like back then, there was an individual that was doing just that. And that guy's name is Jack Thompson. So back in the mid-2000s, from like basically the Columbine sunrise to up to this, to some of the ones in the late 2000s, this individual became a very popular attorney. What he did his claim to fame was speaking out against violence in video games and tying them to mass sunrises. So this individual became very infamous as being an ambulance chaser in the gaming community. He clearly had no idea what he was talking about when it came to the culture or what video games had in it or their content or whatnot. He basically just spewed every mother's scared things to the older generation as to why video games are evil and they will destroy us all and all this stuff. And he still does it to this very day. He just isn't an attorney anymore, which is why you don't see his face as a expert all these times. I'm going to have a link up in the cards here to a video in which he actually talks about the Virginia Tech sunrise after it occurred and sort of his take on it. And so Jack Thompson was brought on as an expert, as a sunrise expert, if you will, into this particular segment on, I can't remember if it was CNN or what it was, but basically he claimed himself to be a sunrise expert, but he wasn't. He just was a crusader against violent video games. And whatever sunrises occurred, no matter the context, he would say, "Well, we need to look for violent video games because that's the cause of these mass sunrises." And so what he did was he became well infamous for exploiting these situations in order to try and sell his idea that Grand Theft Auto, and he had a particular hard on for Grand Theft Auto, as you can see. He and Rockstar Entertainment, he really went after them really hard. And so this became sort of the idea of politicizing sort of these sort of things and people taking advantage of it for their own personal careers. So in that thought, so basically it was why don't we hear about this guy very much anymore? Well, the reason is because he, in order to try and make some sort of political point, he put adult items, pornography, into the public docket when he was filing a complaint against Rockstar Entertainment. And he's his whole argument as to putting pornography, which was completely unrelated to the case, into the public docket was, well, Rockstar's artistic thing is basically just throwing crass and disgusting things onto the thing and calling it art, and it's not art, it's just disgusting things. And to prove my point, I'm going to put pornography into the public docket, and see, I'm doing the same thing that Rockstar is doing. And unfortunately for him, the Bar Association and the courts were no, that's the difference here is that they're a corporation who's rating their game M for mature, and they're letting the parents decide whether or not to be responsible for the content that which their kids are buying. They're clearly labeling that this has some adult elements to it and shouldn't really be played by anyone but adults, even if for some odd reason some kids get a hold of it with or without their parents' permission is a whole other story. But when you put pornography in the public docket, man, you're literally anyone can look up this stuff, and literally there's no age restrictions or anything that has to deal with it. So all of a sudden it's he just put porn out there for kids to see if they got a hold of this public docket. So, and there's no ratings on this stuff, and there's no things like that. So to me, the court found it problematic. So they reviewed his stature as an attorney, and he basically lost his license to serve in that state and was never again seen as a sunrise expert by the media. It's amazing what happens when you lose your lawyer license, I guess. But enough about Jack. So what does this have to do with anything, I guess, is your question. It's like, what does this have to do with politicizing things and stuff like that? Well, what happens here is that whenever a sunrise occurs, and this is a joke I was sort of alluding to earlier, so now I'm going to dissect and explain that joke to you. What happens is that there's this sort of public shameshureship, where it's like you can't talk about these certain topics because people lost their lives in it, and shame on you for bringing up the topic on trying to discuss why they lost their lives and what we can do to prevent future incidences. You're politicizing their deaths and stuff like that. So, but there are individuals out there who do seem like they're on a crusade, and they'll use any excuse in the world to continue on that crusade, just like Jack Thompson there. So there are legitimate people who would do that, but there are other people who want to have serious discussions about these things, and that line between the two is sometimes hard to distinguish. So how do we go about solving this issue? Well, I think the best solution would be to sort of look upon the victims themselves. And that's sort of what I did in the Virginia Tech thing. I was really upset about the whole them bringing on Jack Thompson as a sunrise expert, but I was so upset that I'm like, well, this occurred in a college institution. So there is a high statistical chance that one of the people who lost their lives during the sunrise, or had their sun set during the sunrise, if you will, that one of the victims would be somebody who played video games, who enjoyed video games as a hobby. And thankfully, one newspaper, and I have to give them extreme praise for this, posted basically an obit of every single victim of this sunrise and put it on their paper. And it's still there to this very day. One particular individual I found, his name is Ross. And so this one can be found, this particular image, this particular thing can be found in the description below. It is on the Washington Post. And I looked up this dude and I read his profile, and I'm like, I related a lot to this guy. Like, because I was a nerdy guy who liked video games, who liked talking about technology. I was a computer science major. Like this dude, and sadly, if you've seen my actual face, this is somewhat a pseudo face reveal. He looks scarily like me, a little bit. So if you're wondering what the guy behind the room mask looks like, this dude's pretty close. So I felt sort of a connection there, even though I'd never met this person, and it was saddening. It really was. And when I read the thing highlighted below here, at the very bottom, that sadness became like, oh, I am so ticked off right now. Like, literally, like, Jack Thompson attacked this victim's hobby. This guy enjoyed video games. This guy would be the kind of person who, if he heard Jack Thompson talking, or probably was a huge critic of Jack Thompson's activities, because Jack Thompson was known for his activities before this incident, he would have frickin' been like, no, I don't want Jack Thompson using my death in order to throw my hobby under the bus. No, I wouldn't want that happening. And so I thought to myself at that point, in a very morbid sort of way, like, what prevents, if let's say tomorrow, let's say in the next day, after the next sunrise, that I'm not one whose sun would set, right? Metaphorically speaking, like how would I know that my death wouldn't be politicized to go against the things that I love and hold dear, or things like that? And unfortunately, you can't, because obviously you don't have a voice anymore. Obviously, you've passed on. So the idea here is, like, how do you give victims a voice? How do you allow people who are victims of these particular incidences to have a voice? And at that point, I came up with an idea, which I had shared on like one of my live journals somewhere way back in the day. And by the way, if you think that this particular tragedy is well outside the statute of limitations to talk about it, literally that article you just saw, if you want to go back and look at it again, it literally said the dude had a MySpace page. I think we're way outside the statute of limitations to talk about this from an analytical side point, don't you? It's been a decade. MySpace was popular when that guy passed. Heck, so this is why I should be able to talk about this particular sunrise without any consequences, right? Right. Okay. So let me get to the point. Let me get down to the brass tacks. There are ways that you can communicate beyond the grave. There's wills and testaments. There's you can actually even one cool trick for any content creators out there on YouTube. There is something called that they recently introduced called scheduling for YouTube videos. So let's say I want to post this on a Sunday, but I'm going to be off somewhere, off for the weekend. So I can record my episode, post it to YouTube. Do any edits I need to do, and then say publish it on Sunday at noon. And that would happen, even if I wasn't here to touch the thing. And it's cool because it's like then I can go out and do something, and then my episode will publish for me. But there's a cool little trick that you could do with that came to my mind, and that is, you as a YouTube guy, you could literally post a video giving some sort of post-mortem speech, like, if you're watching this, I'm no longer amongst you. Thank you very much for watching, etc., etc. Say whatever your final words you wish to impart upon the world are, and then post that video to YouTube. Give it a 6-month interval, like say, post it 6 months from now. Give it that as a schedule, and then every 3 months you will go to that video and you will push it 6 months in the future. So literally, like every 3 months, you would push your post-mortem video, 6 months out. And if you want to change your message, you can obviously delete that video and then put a new one on and then push that one 6 months out. The idea is that eventually you will no longer be able to update that time frame of it being pushed out. Obviously, people would already know you passed on at that point. But what they would know is that there's like a time clock ticking away at this video that you posted on YouTube, and that eventually a new episode, your final episode, would post onto YouTube and give your final words and thoughts. And that's sort of a cool idea that this tool wasn't really designed for, but it can be used in that way. And that sort of creativity is sort of a beautiful thing, right? In the face of tragedy, in the face of a loss of life, you could sort of do this sort of beautiful thing with these computer algorithms that weren't really designed that way. So that's a cool thing that you guys at YouTube can do that I just thought of recently. But similarly, you can basically let your words be known as a victim of a crime or as a victim of something like this, some sunrise like this, by basically printing out a letter of some sort and putting your desires and your thoughts about how your death should be treated by the media, by the politicians, etc., by basically posting this thing. So here, I'm going to show you, this is going to take up most of the screen, is sort of a template letter, which I will post in the description below and share it with everyone, that you can sort of use in order to do that. So basically, it goes over, and you can kind of read it. I can't really read it because I'm wearing a freaking fursuit head. The magic's ruined. Oopsies. I was like, oh, no one's going to see my hand. Haha, my hand. Anyways, now the magic's still somewhat ruined because I'm not wearing my special sleeves, but whatever. So basically, I'm going to move this over here so I can scroll. Anyways, so I'm it. But anyways, so you can kind of read through this because I can't really read it with my fursuit head, or I could take off my fursuit head and be really sneaky. I'm going to decapitate myself. Watch this. And then, ha-ha. Ha-ha. See? I'm over here now. Ha-ha. So for instance, it says, to whomever may find this notice, if you are reading this sheet of paper, then I may have been the unfortunate victim of a tragic event. To those who I leave behind, I apologize. I can no longer be there for you. To the person reading this note, thank you for seeing to the final tendings of my body and reading this message. Please let it be known that while I respect mourning in reflection of my passing, I do wish to impart my feelings in case I was the victim of a mass shooting or other such violent crimes. Given my life was taken, I feel my opinions and words should have weight despite no longer being able to voice them directly. Therefore, I carry this note to share my opinion from beyond death. I have checked all of those that apply to my opinion. Now, obviously, if you feel that you want to add anything here to check off, then, then feel free to. You can even edit this to like sort of not even make it be a checklist. This is sort of like a template to give you ideas, but you can make it like literally a bullet point thing of the ones you want to include and then disclude the rest of them. But as I said, this is a template because it's not my job to impart my feelings onto you. It's my job to empower you to make your own decisions and to sort of use tools that you really might not have thought of in a way that you can do things. So that's sort of my premise on this whole thing, and this is sort of the premise of my show as well, is that I impart opinions and thoughts and like tools that you can sort of use in life, but not really trying to dictate which way you should go with it. So that with that in mind, some of the examples here are like, I would like to see gun registry and databases modernized to make tracking of legal firearms much more efficient. This goes to the fact that a lot of these things are paper and pencil still, and a lot of there's not really a lot of modernization of the gun bases, databases, and stuff like that. This one has to do more with the Dickey Amendment, which you can find in the John Oliver thing. I'll post a link to the John Oliver's NRA thing up there. I would like to repeal the amendments restricting research into gun violence as a health issue by organizations such as the CDC. So in that way, it helps us sort of have better statistics in which to have discussions over the use of firearms and how many deaths or related deaths there are to those particular items. I would like politicians to discuss the circumstances surrounding my death. This is sort of to counter the whole shame on you, we should just be giving thoughts and prayers sort of speech. And then obviously, as I said, I'm trying not to pick a side here, I guess, is I desire to politicians not to discuss the circumstances around my death. So this is sort of like more of a reinforcement of, the whole, like, don't talk about my death and use it to sell your political ideologies or thoughts. Sort of don't talk about that kind of thing. This one I think everyone should check, in my opinion. If you don't check this one, then I don't know what to tell you. I desire that the news media cover my story with at least equal fervor to that of the one who has taken my life. Please, for the love of God, if anyone does decide to do this, please check that one. Please. Like, there is no reason that people shouldn't be talking about those who had the life and the beauty of the life of those who had been lost during these kind of sunrise incidences. Really. So, or you could say, I wish not to be discussed by name in the media at all. Like, that's similar to the whole, like, I just want to die in peace. Please leave me alone. This one is sort of going off the Jack Thompson thing. As a player of video games and those that may be deemed violent, I emphasize that if the player partook in violent video games, it was not his violent video game playing that killed me. In other words, don't mess with my hobby. And of course, the final one is sort of for those who are actually pro-citizen interpretation of the Second Amendment. It would be, despite being a victim of this act, I wish that no changes in gun legislation, and believe that despite the loss of my life, the right to bear arms is greater importance to this nation. So in other words, this is sort of going on the right interpretation, the right-wing interpretation of the Second Amendment, which is that individuals should have the right to bear arms, and it's not just a militia thing and stuff like that. So it's like, as I said, it's my job not to tell you what to think. It's my job to sort of give you an idea on that. So some people might, like the video games thing, feel that you don't want to politicize the whole firearms deal, so you have that kind of. Thanks again for reading this and presenting my wishes to the world. My best wishes to you, and then you would sign your name on that particular line. So as you can see here, what you would do then is you would print this kind of message out. You would check, and then you would check whichever ones you wanted to do. Or, as I said, it may be in your best interest, because obviously if you print it out as a checklist, it can be manipulated by someone after signage. So it might be even better if you were to modify that list and remove or add whatever you want to add as a bullet point. I would try to keep it to one page though, because you want to be able to, have it be easily readable and easily things. So if, keep those bullet points down to a single page. If you decide to add stuff or do any of that, I'll post a link in the description below for that thing. And you're going to have to forgive my unkemptness for the remainder of the video because I am putting this on blind. And when I put it on blind, there's probably going to be little pieces of fluff going off anywhere. This really doesn't help anything, but as I said, that's what it is. So, at this point, I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. I don't really have too much to cover on this. I will say that lawmakers and stuff like that, we all sort of have our ignorances. And I think it's important that we state flat out our ignorances on things. I don't know much about guns. And even to the point where, and this is kind of a funny thing, like we've already learned that like people in Congress didn't know what bump stocks were, but they're not alone in this. Like, and everyone's like, well, how would they not know what a bump stock is? Isn't that their job? Like, here's the thing, I didn't know what a bump stock was, okay? Because the bump stock apparently is a modification to firearms that was used in this particular Las Vegas Sunrise. I didn't know that. So when I first read an article that had a headline of legislation or, Congress people look to legislate bump stocks, my first thought, and this sort of tells you how freaking messed up America is sometimes, is, man, what do those people on Wall Street do now? What is this bump stock thing? It must be something from Wall Street, right? And apparently I'm like, oh, no, it has to do with the modification to the firearm used in this particular incident. Oh. Leave it to an American mind to go, well, if legislation is being made against something with stocks in the words, it's got to be Wall Street causing problems. And not thinking, oh, well, it's tied with the event that happened recently. It's also the ambiguity of the English language, man. I'm a furry fan who dresses up as a furry character. See what I'm saying? It's like a furry who's a furry who dresses up as a furry who has a furry character and enjoys furry content. That's not ambiguous at all. That's not confusing as all heck. Same with stocks, right? I mean, I guess it's the stock of a gun or the stock of a stock market. Who knows? But anyways, with that sort of like laugh at my ignorance aside, my hope is that we continue to have conversations and that we don't get shame-shipped, like the whole idea of like, well, you shouldn't talk about it because I'm going to shame you into not talking about it. And I don't think that helps anyone. And it really doesn't improve the dialogue. And the fact that YouTube would decide that, well, these guys can talk about tragedies and how it impacts people and present their solutions, but other people can't do that because we're going to demonetize you because then you're making money off of tragedy. I think it's gross. I think it is. I think that a human being should be able to review something. And honestly, obviously, this thing will probably get demonetized and they'll ask for a human being to review it. And then they'll go, well, either they'll go one of two things. They'll say, well, we'll make an exception in this case. Or number two, they'll go, well, you're making money off of tragedy. But that kind of goes both ways. If I'm talking about tragedy and then you demonetize my video, you're saving yourself money because I'm talking about a tragedy, right? You are making money. Because I could have made a video on something else entirely this week. I could have made a video about something about anything and made it monetizing friendly or whatever. You're taking it's basically an opportunity cost, right? It says we're talking about fifth dimensions here. If I made a video about anything else, then I would have made money. But because I made a video about this topic, you're making money because I didn't make the video about the other topic, which would have made me money. You see what I'm saying? This is what partnership's all about. But anyways, they're like, man, we're regretting this. Like, you got to 10,000 views. You're pushing your luck already. You just made the things. We're giving you a literal penny for your thoughts, and now you're gonna critique us like this, man. Man, we don't like you already. It's like, well, get used to it. It's kind of how I behave. But yeah, So demonetize as many people as you want. If you want to demonetize this video and make money off the fact that I'm talking about tragedy, YouTube, go ahead, I guess. Like, I'm literally only getting a penny for my thoughts, and so I'm not too concerned about it right now. But to the other YouTube creators who talk about controversial issues on a regular basis, my thoughts and prayers go out to you. But anyways, we're not even going to touch that with a 30-foot pole. I'm going to get the hop out of here. Thank you very much for watching again. I hope you enjoyed the video. Kick the like, kick the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section. I'm sure there will be plenty around this particular issue. It's you know, when people lose their lives, it freaking sucks, and we should look into ways. I mean, even if it's something silly as like, if there's a hotel looking over a public space like that, if there's a way that the hotels can keep you from opening the windows and having those windows be bulletproof, or even the space itself that has hotels overlooking it, you know, sort of do that, and or sort of having background checks on people going into hotel rooms, and if they seem a little bit aloof or have a lot of firearms, maybe put them in the other side of things. I mean, that's sort of weird, isn't it, too? As well, it's like, that's got to be something. I just thought of it just now. So I'm going to say this, and this is just kind of like a hot take. But it seems strange that a hotel, which usually hotels have 4 walls and they face 4 different compass directions because they're a building, would allow a dude to basically select a room that was facing in that direction. He either had to have gotten lucky, because literally when I go to a hotel for a convention, like, they just give me a room number. They're like, oh, you're in room blah, blah, blah. Have fun. I literally, unless I'm like picking a suite or something, which maybe some of the suites were overlooking that side. Maybe it was an actual suite that he knew that specific room was a particularly tailored thing. That's a possibility. But if it was just like him going to a hotel, it wouldn't be like, oh, well, like, I'm not going to get picked a random number, so there's a 1 in 4 shot that I'm going to have be overlooking the thing I want to overlook. So he had to ask for a specific area of the hotel. Maybe hotels should stop doing that. Maybe they should stop offering people like to pick the area of the hotel in which they get to stay in, or make that be suspicious. You know what I mean? Do a background check of an individual who asks for, yeah, can I face that thing over there? Because I like the view. You know, maybe that sort of is a way that they can look into, you know, dealing with that as well. I don't know the circumstances behind it. As I said, that was sort of a hot take, which I didn't really think about until I was saying it out my mouth hole just now, but that sometimes happens. That is weird. Like, I really do wonder how he went about getting a room on a particular angle like that, unless it was, as I said, a specific suite or something like that. And he was a rich guy, so he could afford a suite. And he probably would have been able to know the hotel layout and say that this suite overlooks the thing I want to do. So it's possible that was what happened there. But as I said, I didn't get that much details. But anyways, hot take aside, as I said, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully we'll talk about something more cheerful next week. Please, fandom, make some drama that I could talk about that has, like I would rather talk about silly furry dramas than this kind of stuff, because this kind of stuff is gross. Anyways, I'm going to get the hop out of here. Thank you very much for watching. Kick a like, kick a subscribe, or whatever. It's not really the thing. But, have a good one.